welcome to Topic Time with Harrison Young. We're more than halfway through the month of November. It's feeling like fall, but it's the weather's not too bad. I mean, it hasn't snowed yet down here. I guess up in the North Country it did a little bit, and as far as I'm concerned, keep it there. But we have an awesome show for you guys tonight. We have an actor filmmaker. He's got a couple of clips of a documentary he's just produced, which I guess is just premiered, and we're going to look at it and we're going to talk about it. But before I get to him, I'm going to read these great underwriters, and we'll proceed per usual. So we got Pacini's Pizza in Middleborough. They deliver. We got Pal's Driving School in Middleborough, servicing driving students in Middleborough and vicinity. We got Ocean Street Auto Repair and Service in Marshfield. We got Salon Giovanni in Marshfield. We got Crazy Axes Recreation Center in Hanover. We got the Barber Zone in Middleborough and Taunton. We got Tom Auto in Middleborough. We got Bonnie Coat Monuments in Middleborough. We got Genuine's Inspection in Middleborough. We got New England Floorscapes Incorporated in Middleborough. We got Lux Auto Detailing in Duxbury. We got Pembroke Radiator in Pembroke. We got DNS Auto Works in Abington, right here on Route 58, and we got the Gunrunner LLC in Middleborough, dedicated to our Second Amendment rights. And I want to thank you guys very much. And now on that note, I will now introduce Mr. Joe Collymore, and he's got quite an exclusive history and in filmmaking, and he's a book in book publishing, and it's incredible. I just found that out, and we're going to talk to him tonight. So, Joe, I want to thank you for coming in and being on my show tonight.
Thank you, Harrison. Great to be here.
Okay. All right. Well, you look like you're a man of the world, kind of. You said you just started filmmaking after your retirement from education publishing. Is that it?
That is right. After 40 years in education publishing for two of the world's largest education publishers,
okay,
Houghton Mifflin Harcourt and Pearson Education.
Yeah, Houghton Mifflin does dictionaries. I know that.
Among other things
Among
as
other
well.
things,
they
right.
work in that K-12 space, as does Pearson Education. A lot of people recognize Pearson under the names of the Financial Times, Penguin Putnam,
yep.
The Dorling Kindersley travel guides, just to name a few.
Okay, well, what was your function? You've done this. You did this for 40 years. You said, right?
Over a span of 40 years, and my focus and specialty was in instructional technology, assessment systems,
okay,
and urban strategies, urban education strategies. How do you integrate all of these media, both in terms of print and digital, into urban settings?
Okay, now was this for public school students or older?
Primarily public school students, but we also worked as well as in the private school space. But primarily my focus was in public, K-12.
Right, but it sounds to me like the subjects you just described were a little bit advanced. So I'm wondering, I mean, this doesn't sound like the kind of thing you'd be doing with grade students. I'm thinking more like maybe advanced high schoolers and maybe college prep students as well, or college students.
Oh, not at all. I mean, believe it or not, tablets were being used as far back as 10 years ago in some pre-K settings.
Tablets?
Yes.
Is that a computer term?
Think of it as an iPad.
Okay. No, I know that.
Yes,
I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about the content of the type of books that you publish sounded a little advanced. That's all. Not the kind of thing I remember from school. I mean, I remember we had algebra, we had geometry, we had English 101. Lit, we had comp and lit, we had, Spanish, whatever I took. So it sounds to me, but, those are the basics. What you're talking about sounds like it's a little more advanced is all I'm saying. But
well, it's a range of subjects.
Okay,
and
but it focuses on public school students.
That is correct.
Okay, yeah. At all ages?
All ages,
okay.
K-12.
Very good, okay,
yep.
That's great.
Yep.
All right, well, like what I do with every guest also is I try to, we're going to talk about your current film career as well. I know that's going pretty well. But tell me about what you were like as a kid. As I do that with every guest, I try to find out, where they grew up and what they were doing then and how it got them to where they're at now. So let's go back to when you were a kid. Where did you grow up, and talk about what you were doing then and how it led to what you're doing now. And if I have any questions pertaining to that from what you tell me, I'll fire them in there. So go ahead.
Well, I'm here from the South Shore. I grew up in Duxbury.
Great town.
And I'm the oldest of six.
Okay.
And I have a large extended family, meaning that my mom was one of 15, and I have 54 first cousins.
Wow.
That's just on my mother's side.
Okay.
So it's a very large family that extends throughout the South Shore as well as all the way up into the city of Boston. But I grew up in Duxbury, K-12. I've got a number of friends that we've known each other since we were 5 years old.
Okay.
And, they still reside in the community, although I now live a little further up on the South Shore. I live in the town of Hull.
Oh, okay.
After high
You like
school,
the waterfront, obviously.
Oh, I love the water.
Okay.
I love the water. Love being back in the water,
okay.
if you will. Went to Providence College.
Okay.
I'm a
major.
member,
what was your major?
Majored in education and communications.
Just curious, did you happen
Yes.
to be there when they made the Final Four in '73?
Yes, I was.
Cool.
Yes, I was.
Cool. Yeah, I remember that.
You do you?
Well, I was 13 then, 14.
Well, now you're really dating yourself because I was a member of the last all-male freshman class
Okay.
at Providence College.
Oh, you mean they started only they just started
It was all
girls
male.
after you?
They went co-ed the following year. My sophomore year, they brought in co-eds.
Cool. I didn't know that. I thought they were always co-ed.
No.
Huh.
50 years ago. So
Yeah.
we do have
1971.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the year that they brought in the co-eds.
So you're a little older than me then. It's
I
hard
guess
to
so,
believe.
you could say. Well,
Well,
thank
some people are, not many.
All right. All right. I got my first job in the education industry as a teacher.
Where?
In Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay, is it what, elementary, high school?
Middle school,
Middle
and
school.
I taught. I was one of the first to be introduced to instructional technology. Our school got a grant from a computer company.
Okay.
The principal asked, "Who's taking computer classes?" And I was the only one that raised my hand. And so I got assigned to work with this computer company by the name of Control Data Corporation.
I know them. Of them.
Minnesota. And they developed an instructional system called Play-Doh.
Okay.
And I learned the
No,
language.
no relation to the stuff that kids play.
Plato, named after the Greek
named
philosopher.
after the philosopher,
That's
right?
correct.
Yep.
Wrote some lessons for my class. The company was impressed with what I did, made me an offer making twice as much than
Okay.
I was making in the classroom. And off to Washington, D.C., I went as a programmer analyst.
Okay.
Working.
All right, wait, hold up a second. So
Sure.
you went from being a teacher in Providence,
First year teacher.
and then you went to D.C.
as a first level programmer analyst for a computer company that was in the education training space.
Right, but that ended your job as a teacher, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you were just there for
Public school.
Public
Yes.
school. So okay,
Fast forward.
I understand. All right, fast forward. Go ahead. You tell me then what happened.
So I grew up in this whole space of, shall we call it, education technology, instructional technology.
Yep.
And so through an iteration of mergers and acquisitions, I came to work for Pearson Education. And
Now, they're a
ascended-
publishing company, right?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
they invested in instructional technologies.
Okay.
And became one of the leading developers of instructional software.
Okay.
And
so,
that's my background. That's my expertise. Is
all right. So
instructional software.
how did you end up with Houghton and Mifflin and the other, and what's the
Houghton Mifflin Harcourt.
Hardcore? Yeah.
Yeah, Harcort.
Right.
O-U-R-T, Harcourt. My boss at Pearson,
Yeah.
he had to retire. He got sick.
Yep.
Had to have a double lung transplant.
Wow. Wow.
And he had to retire. And I felt like I needed to make a change.
Okay.
And lo and behold, the CEO from Houghton Mifflin came calling. He knew about my work in that space for Pearson.
They're in New York, right?
No, Houghton Mifflin was Boston-based.
Oh, it is.
Yes,
Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Now that you mention it, I've
Yeah.
seen some of my textbooks
Yeah.
over the years that have said Boston. Okay.
Nathaniel Hawthorne, believe it or not, was one of the original authors for Houghton Mifflin.
That's not hard to believe because he was during the colonial days or the revolutionary times, and he was a New England guy
Yeah.
through and through, and so was Houghton Mifflin, obviously.
Yep.
Okay, no, that's awesome.
Some great stories. I actually got a chance to see one of his desks that sit out just outside the CEO's office in downtown Boston.
Okay, so you worked there for how long?
Well, after Pearson, another decade with Houghton Mifflin, and of course they in turn acquired Harcourt.
Okay,
And I retired from that entire industry in late 2017.
okay,
And I knew that I didn't want to just sit on the sofa watching television.
Okay.
I wanted to stay active in some form or fashion.
okay,
I had lent my voice to some of the first generation ebooks.
okay. Now, are those books for voice instruction instead of for people that are hard of hearing or?
Or visually impaired.
Visually impaired,
So
okay.
take, for example, ATD's group over there in Marshfield.
Okay.
Where you would, as I did many, many years ago for Ed Perry.
Yeah, I got my
volunteer.
start there too.
Yep, yeah,
Okay.
volunteer and read to the visually impaired, the Sunday Times.
Oh, cool.
And that was a lot of fun. And so I was already attuned, if you will, to lending one's voice to recordings that would find their way into things like narrated books,
Okay.
history books, and science literature and other types of media.
Well, you do have a great sounding voice for reading.
I thank you.
All right. Well, how did you end up now you're in filmmaking? So how did that come to be?
Well, it kind of stumbled into that.
Okay,
and
obviously
by
everything
that-
happens for a reason.
Of
but
course,
you
absolutely.
Explain it. Go ahead.
So again, I retired from the grind of the K-12 job.
Yep.
And now I'm retired, and I said, what do I want to do next? And I looked around, and you've heard of Meetup, meetup.com.
Yeah, okay.
So the executive director of the community access system in Hingham, at that time his name is Fazad Wafapour, held a meetup
Okay.
of interested people that wanted to work in this space of local television community access programming.
Okay.
I was curious, so I attended.
All right.
And he heard my voice and he said, you know, we could use you to do some PSAs.
Cool.
So I said, well, okay, what the hell? I volunteered to do some PSAs, and before I realized it, well, what's going on behind the camera? How do you work that camera? And then, how do you write a script? And I began to learn some new things, but I also found that I was able to fall back on some skills that I had honed over my 40 years in education publishing
Okay.
to lend themselves to this interesting work, this fascinating work of creative content development for local viewers, and for that matter, back into the education space with a film that I was fortunate enough to be invited to collaborate on. And it's a short documentary about the dangers of adolescent vaping.
Okay.
And we had our premiere last week. The name of the film is called TakingAToke.com.
Okay.
And it's all about the misleading and false advertising of the large e-cigarette manufacturers, the vaping, if you will, that targeted our young people with a new technology that really hasn't been proven in terms of its long-term adverse effects on their bodies. And in our film includes a young man who was the unfortunate victim of this false advertising.
Yep.
He slipped into a 51-day coma, only to wake up to be told he underwent a double lung transplant
Wow.
as a result of damaging his lungs from vaping.
Just like your old boss, except he was a lot younger.
You got it.
Well, guess what? We're halfway through the show, and speaking of that, we're going to watch a couple of clips of that documentary, and we'll be right back. So stay tuned, and we'll talk about it when we come back.
Anyone ever tell you a story that has lingered with you for days, months, or even years? Well, here at Corner Stop Eatery, Dennis Zaya oversees an event where such stories come in bulk. My special guest today is United States Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts. Welcome, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Joe. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome to South Shore Diversity Spotlight. This is where we'll visit people, places, and things of interest, each having its own story, rich in diversity, right under our noses, here, south of Boston. Welcome to Close-Ups. My name is Joe Collymore, and today's guest is St. Nicholas of Myra, otherwise known as Santa Claus, otherwise known as Kris Kringle, otherwise known as the man with the bag. We can get Matt back. We can train him up. And we'll take breaks along the way.
Jesus Christ, Jack. He nearly had a heart attack last year.
It doesn't have to be this way. Join us October 23rd for National Prescriptions Take Back Day. We'll dispose of your prescriptions. No questions asked. Do the right thing. Don't be an accidental dealer. Springtime is upon us. The birds celebrate her return with festive song, and murmuring streams are softly caressed by the breezes. Thunderstorms, those heralds of spring, roar, casting their dark mantle over heaven. Then they die away to silence, and the birds take up their charming songs once more. On the flower-strewn meadow, with leafy branches rustling overhead, the goat herd sleeps, his faithful dog beside him. Led by the festive sound of rustic bagpipes, nymphs and shepherds lightly dance beneath the spring's beautiful canopy.
The reason why I decided to make the documentary Taking a Toke is because I'm a mom. I've coached a lot of kids in my town, and I also ran an exercise program for 13 or 14 years. And I noticed kids walking up and down the streets and plumes of smoke coming out of them. And that's just not okay. I smoked as a kid and I quit. I lost 2 parents to tobacco. My mother died of lung cancer and my father died of complications because he smoked his whole life. I have a family member that vapes. So vaping is a pack of lies and it's killing people.
Oh, Joe, that was great. Tell me about what we just saw. I know it's kind of harsh, but
Sure.
it's important. So you
Absolutely.
talk about what you did to produce that and where, what it's going to lead to. So go ahead.
So, TakingAToke.com, our executive producer, her name is Lori Tobin.
Okay.
She's a Hull resident,
All right.
a mother and a wife, and she, going back 3 years ago, was mortified when her son was being pressured at the high school into trying vaping.
Okay. Mortified.
Just
That sounds like the wrong word. I'd feel more intimidated. Than mortified.
let's just say she was pretty upset.
Upset, definitely. Yep.
So upset that she, at the time, she also was a local producer of a cooking show in terms of healthy eating for young people.
Okay.
At our studio in Hingham.
Yep.
And so she came in one afternoon and shared her horror, her angst with our executive director, and he encouraged her to do something about it.
Okay.
By making a film about it.
All right.
And volunteered me to help contribute.
Okay.
And I said, sure thing, let's do this. And what we began to do was, of course, the research on these vaping products. Of course, everyone knows who the 800-pound gorilla is, which is Juul.
Okay, I've heard of them.
Absolutely. And Big Tobacco now owns a controlling interest in this vaping company called Juul. And there are several books out on the market that people can research. One is called The Big Vape,
Yep.
and another one is called The Devil's Playbook, which talks about how the tobacco industry, using their marketing tactics 50 years ago, applied them today into this vaping e-cigarette industry.
Isn't it ironic that 50 years ago was when they banned cigarette ads on TV?
That's right.
I'm sure you remember.
Absolutely.
Right? January 2nd, 1971. That was the last. I mean, and I used to enjoy those cigarette ads too as a kid because some of them were cute.
Yeah.
Benson and Hedges, where the cigarette was so long it broke off in the elevators, doors, that kind of
Oh
stuff.
gosh, I remember that. Yes.
Right, and
yes.
then they started, and then in addition to that, they even though they allowed cigarette ads on magazines, they also made it mandatory to put the warning label on them as well. And here it is 50 years later, and they're still trying to work around that, the big tobacco industry. Well, let's face it, you're always going to have smokers, and people think they can, think they can do it safer. When I was a smoker as a kid, I smoked a lot of weed, and I never vaped, and I wouldn't. I haven't smoked anything in 42 years, but I know how the pressure was on, not so much from the other kids, but I felt there was a lot of internal pressure to try and relax, and smoking weed helped me do it. But I also have asthma, and it also caused me to be short of breath and if I hadn't stopped when I did, I probably would have had emphysema by 30, and I don't even want to think about what 40 would have looked like. So, At least I got out with it getting was good. So I can totally relate to this documentary too, from the easy side of it though, obviously.
Vaping is a misnomer
Okay,
because
yep.
vaping, which would suggest you're vaporizing water,
Yes.
but in this case here, it's a sticky substance.
There's harmful chemicals going into your lungs.
Absolutely,
Yep.
and so it's really more of an aerosol. You may as well take hairspray and just spray it in your
Inhale it,
mouth
yeah.
like you would do whipped cream if that's what you're all into.
Right.
And so what's happening is that when they take deep inhalations of this vaping pen, those particles go into the deepest, lowest parts of your lung.
Yeah.
And we don't know the damage, the long-term impact that it has, because this technology's only been out there for 15 years as a vaping appliance.
Yeah, but vaping is a lot more recent than 50 years. That vaping's only been around for like
15.
Oh, 15. I'm
1-5.
sorry. Okay. I thought you
1-5.
said- yeah.
Vaping has only been out for 15 years.
Okay.
And so think about this. The combustible cigarette's been out since when? The Civil War, when they were rolling their own in the trenches?
Oh, I know.
And it was only 50 years ago that the Surgeon General said it causes cancer?
Oh.
So how many years do we have to go before the Surgeon General says vaping is not good?
Well,
for
I
your
guess it
lungs?
would depend on how many casualties come about as a result of it.
And we're starting to see evidence of that now. We're starting to see asthma, vaping-induced asthma.
Yeah, that's no good.
We've got young people now who are presenting asthmatic issues as a result of their
It
vaping.
was 50 years ago I discovered I had asthma. I had my first attack on Monday, November 22nd, 1971, when I was in 7th grade
Sure.
at what's now called West Middle School in Brockton. It was West Junior High School. I had just come back from being under the knife. I'd had nasal polyps removed a week earlier. And I got to school on a cold, frosty November morning, and all of a sudden I couldn't even breathe. I had to go to the nurse's office, and she told me to just kneel on the floor. So for the next several years, I was taking meds for it, and finally, and I was then I started smoking weed anyway, and then eventually I gave it all up, and then I stopped using my meds. I don't need meds at all, which is great. Now at 62, I don't, I haven't used an inhaler in 17 years, which is great. Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. So, well, do you do any other kinds of films besides documentaries, or are you planning
Yes.
to? Let's talk about those too a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Again, this is still check it out, feel your way along as you go. Again, I've been at this for 3 years,
Okay.
and so I'm still very much
And plenty more
a
to go, I'm
neophyte.
sure.
Well, I'm just enjoying the ride and enjoying opportunities, and so those opportunities have included I participated in a commercial for Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Okay.
That
I think
ran
I've
for
seen
3
that.
years. Thank you.
Yep.
I have participated in live theater, which is sort of like really acting without a net, and that's
I know
pretty
what it is. I've done
exhilarating.
it too.
I like that very much.
Cool.
I've had an opportunity to appear in a number of industrial training films.
Okay.
Some of which has been around the healthcare space. So whether it is a company by the name of Care Academy that focuses on how do you develop and certify home-based healthcare workers.
Okay.
And playing the role of either patient or doctor or caregiver. And I like that opportunity to, again, how do I extend that education in a different context?
Okay.
I've also been now involved in local television production.
Right.
So for our Harbor Media Studios, I've had the pleasure of producing a series called Close-Ups,
Okay.
where we interview political candidates.
Okay.
And I was very pleased and fortunate enough to have interviewed United States Senator Elizabeth Warren when she ran for re-election to the United States Senate back a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I've had an opportunity to interview our Plymouth County DA, Timothy Cruz,
Okay.
around senior scams and what are the things that the DA's office is trying to do in that context. Had an opportunity to participate in another program that we call Spotlight on Diversity, South Shore Spotlight on Diversity. And that's all about people, places, and things of interest here on the South Shore.
Okay, I'm sure it's awesome.
So whether it's the South Shore Conservatory or the South Shore Ballet, or,
Don't forget the South Shore Music Circus.
and that as well, among others.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Well, guess what? We're down to the final 5 minutes.
Okay.
I actually had a political candidate in here too a few weeks ago named Jeffrey Souza Paquette he ran for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District out in Worcester County against
Okay.
Jim McGovern, but I don't believe he won. But he had some great ideas that he pitched here, and we had a
Excellent.
wonderful show. So I don't interview too many political candidates, but I'm certainly not against it.
Well, we're doing interviews now with the upcoming gubernatorial election in 2022. So we've got declared candidates like Jeff Deal, Ben Downing, Sonia Chang Diaz, just to name a few,
Okay.
whom I've I've had the opportunity to interview thus far.
That's awesome. We'll get, like I said, we're down to the final 5 minutes.
Sure.
I think I mentioned that. So like I told you at the beginning, what I want you to do is look at the camera, give shouts out to people that are going to see the show. Lots of them. You can start with your friends at Hingham, and then, you know, your family, whatever, and then we'll wrap the show up the way we began it with my music.
Well, thank you very much. And so I want a big shout out to my Hingham Harbor Media team, my production partners. You know who you are. I love you all very much. Thank you so much for all the great opportunities that you've given me. Want to shout out to my agent at Model Club of Boston, to Boston Casting as well. Want to shout out to my family, my daughter Tiffany, my son Isaiah, my granddaughters Olivia and Simone, my brothers and sisters, my special partner Sherry, and a host of others. So again, thank you all. Happy holidays. Stay safe. And look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Of course, that includes your 54 first cousins.
There you go.
No, I didn't forget. All right, well, I hope you had fun with me,
I had a great time.
and I hope we covered as much as we could cover. That having been said, before we wrap, now, do you have anything on the horizon real quick that you want to cover, that you want to mention, that you might have overlooked before we finish it? If not, that's...
Yes, just to say that the next, shall we say, adventure that I'm looking forward to delving into
Okay.
is podcasting.
Okay.
And I really am looking at getting into the integration of music
Okay, yep.
and the spoken word.
Well, that's what I get here in Topic Time.
Excellent.
Okay. And if you had, and again, and speaking of that, if you know, it sounds like we're almost competitors. But if you had fun with
no.
me, if you know anybody that wants to, you know, that has an interesting story to tell, send them my way. You get a lot of
Absolutely.
guests to word 'em out.
Absolutely. You know, jazz, when you talk about jazz, the history of jazz, and then how does jazz interrelate into and influenced hip hop, as a case in point.
There you go. That's a very good segue right there.
There you go.
All right, you did a great job with me. Obviously, you ready
Thank
to
you,
wrap the show up the way we
Harrison.
began
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Okay, folks, thanks for watching Topic Time. More great episodes to follow. See you next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Oh, that is very cool, man.
Thank you. I'd argue if I could.
I like that song.